when my sister wrenched my crutch away and threw it onto Dad's birthday cake, shouting, "Stop faking it tour, just leeching." The sound of her voice sharp, almost spitting, rang louder than any celebration that night. The whole room froze. Like a picture snapped with the flash on, everyone caught mid. I remember the way the plastic forks clattered to the linoleum. Dad's face was part shock, part something I couldn't name, a kind of sadness I hadn't seen before. There was icing on my sister's fingers, white and sticky, and underneath the glow of the happy birthday candles, all I could think about was how heavy my leg felt. How useless. Before that night, our family wasn't perfect, but I thought kindness was our default. Busy, noisy meals filled the house, Dad humming as he stirred his tea. My sister Hannah telling jokes over eggs, and Mom fussing about how much sugar we all put in our coffee. The kitchen light always glowed a soft amber at dusk, and homemade bread cooled by the open window. When I got sequined, the pain started in my hip, and eventually crutches became part of my daily uniform. Everything in our routines slowed a little, but nothing completely stopped. Dad tried to pretend nothing had changed. He'd set a place for me at the head of the table, help me into the car, check in at every doctor's appointment. When Mom's temper frayed from stress, she'd pat my hand a bit too hard, as if afraid gentleness would show she worried too much. Hannah, though she became louder, her jokes more pointed. She'd slide her phone across the table, showing fitness influencers and saying, "You see, that's real effort." I'd try to laugh, pretend it didn't sting. There were still moments of kindness. She brought me tea when I lay up too long, or sat at the foot of my bed on sleepless nights, watching old movies. Sometimes, she called me kiddo and told me to chin up, just until it gets better. It made me wonder if we might start feeling normal again. Dad's birthday was supposed to be a celebration. We'd spent all week preparing. Hannah was in charge of decorations. She taped up streamers, but fussed if any drooped. I helped as best as I could, folding napkins and reminding Mom that Dad could never finish a whole cake alone anymore. She pretended not to hear, slicing 3 layers of chocolate anyway. I remember that morning, waking to the smell of cinnamon and burnt toast. Dad's attempt at breakfast. "Just to let your mother sleep for once?" The window was open, and autumn leaves skated along the porch. Small things, ordinary things, they all felt enormous that day. Like little signs we'd made it through something hard together. But the tension was there, pulsing underneath. Hannah barely spoke at breakfast, eyes glued to her phone, her lips pressed tight. She did everything quickly, almost angrily, pouring orange juice, brushing crumbs from the counter, slamming the fridge a little too hard. At lunch, as we set the table, Hannah muttered, "Isn't it funny? You're always sitting now. That must be nice, huh?" Her tone was casual, but the words stuck in my throat. I smiled, steady, but inside, I wondered if she really meant it. Later, as guests arrived for Dad's big dinner, cousins, aunts, neighbors, the noise soared. People hugged each other in the hallway. Mom carried platters of steaming rice and stew, and Dad wore the old cardigan we all teased him about. Hannah watched me from the kitchen, jaw set. She carried my crutch over from the hall, the way you might carry an umbrella you didn't want to touch. She leaned it by my chair with a force that knocked it sideways. "Better keep it handy," she said, voice flat. Still, I tried not to mind. It was just a hard day, I told myself. Maybe she was tired, or angry at something else entirely. When the big moment came, Dad settled into his armchair for cake. Candles flickered while everyone sang off-key, and I sat nearby, smiling, trying to remember when things were last easy. Then Hannah knelt beside me, eyes narrowed. I smelled the faintest hint of her perfume, vanilla and cherries, the same she'd worn since high school. "Is it really that bad?" she whispered, lips barely moving. Her fingers brushed my crutch, testing. "Or do you just like the attention?" I stammered, confused, but she shook her head. Louder now. "You could stand if you wanted. You just don't. You make us all feel sorry for you. You're leeching off Dad, off Mom, off all of us." And then, in one motion, a blur, she yanked my crutch, swung it over the table, and sent it flying into the cake. Frosting splattered across the tablecloth, onto Dad's hands. The room went silent, everyone watching pieces of chocolate and wax tumble. My heart hammered, I couldn't breathe. Dad stood quickly, his mouth open but no words coming. Mom pressed her apron to her mouth, shaking. In my head, I heard every doctor's warning. Every night, I'd lain awake trying not to cry. Hannah glared, chest heaving, wild with anger and something else, hurt, maybe, or fear. No one moved. In that moment, the whole world shrank to the space between me, my crutch on the ruined cake, and my sister's furious, tear-glossed eyes. I don't know how long I sat there, frozen, before my voice came back. It started as a whisper, then grew louder, steadier than I expected. Hannah, what are you talking about? She laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that didn't match the sister I thought I knew. Don't play innocent. You've been milking this for months. Poor little you. Can't walk right, can't help around the house. Can't do anything but sit there while the rest of us work. Dad finally found his voice. Hannah, that's enough. His tone was firm, but there was a tremor underneath, like he was afraid of what might come next. No, Dad, it's not enough. She turned to face him, tears streaming now. Do you know how much I've given up? I turned down that job in Seattle because you needed help with her. I canceled my vacation. I'm here every single day while she just sits there with that crutch like it's a crown. Mom stepped forward, her hand reaching out. Sweetheart, your sister is sick. You know that? The doctors. Hannah spat. Have any of you actually looked at those reports? I did. Last week, when she left them on the counter. You want to know what they said? Patient shows improvement with physical therapy. The prognosis is good for gradual recovery. Gradual recovery, Mom. That means she could be doing more. She could be trying. The room was still silent, but now there were murmurs, whispers passing between cousins, heads turning to look at me. I felt exposed, like someone had stripped away a layer of skin. My aunt shifted uncomfortably by the doorway. Uncle Frank cleared his throat but said nothing. I gripped the edge of my chair, knuckles white. Hannah, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. She grabbed her purse from the counter, moved jerky, and rushed. I understand that I've put my whole life on hold while you play the victim. Enjoy your party. The door slammed. The sound echoed through the house, followed by the rev of her car engine outside. Then, slowly, the guests began to move again, uncomfortable shuffles. Forced smiles, someone suggesting we should cut what was left of the cake anyway. But I couldn't move. I sat there, staring at the mess of frosting and broken candles, feeling every pair of eyes on me. Did they believe her? Did they think I was faking too? Dad came over and squeezed my shoulder. His hand was warm, solid. Don't listen to her, he said quietly. She's been under a lot of stress. But even as he said it, I saw the doubt flicker across his face just for a second, but it was there. That tiny moment of uncertainty cut deeper than anything Hannah had screamed. The next few days passed in a fog. Hannah didn't come home. She didn't answer texts or calls. Mom tried to act normal, but I caught her crying in the laundry room, folding towels with shaking hands. Dad threw himself into work, leaving early and coming home late, avoiding conversations that might lead back to that night. I spent hours alone, replaying Hannah's words. At first, I was angry, furious that she would humiliate me like that in front of everyone. But then, in the quiet hours before dawn, doubt crept in. Was I doing enough? Could I push harder? Were my doctors just being kind, telling me to rest when I should have been forcing myself to walk more, to hurt more, to prove I wasn't weak? I pulled out my medical records and read them carefully, the way Hannah must have. There, in clinical language, was the truth. Patient demonstrates consistent improvement with prescribed physical therapy regimen. Weight-bearing exercises to be increased gradually to avoid re-injury. Crutch assistance remains medically necessary during the recovery phase. Medically necessary, not optional, not a prop for sympathy. But Hannah had read these same words and seen something different. She'd seen improvement and gradual and decided it meant I was choosing to stay dependent. How had we gotten so far apart that she couldn't see my pain was real? I decided I needed to talk to her, face to face. If she wouldn't come home, I'd go to her. She was staying at her friend Melissa's apartment across town, a small studio that smelled like incense and cats. I called an Uber, something I rarely did because it felt like an extravagance, and made the 20-minute drive with my crutch propped awkwardly beside me. Melissa answered the door, her expression guilty. She doesn't want to see anyone right now. Please, I said, just 5 minutes. I need to understand. From inside, I heard Hannah's voice, flat and tired. Let her in. The apartment was dim, curtains drawn. Hannah sat on the couch in rumpled clothes, hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked smaller somehow, deflated. When our eyes met, she didn't look angry anymore, just exhausted. I lowered myself onto the chair across from her, carefully positioning my crutch. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said, "Why do you hate me?" She flinched. "I don't hate you." "Then why? Why would you say those things?" Hannah's jaw worked, like she was chewing words she didn't want to swallow. Finally, she exhaled, long and slow. "Because I'm drowning, and nobody sees it. Everyone sees you, your pain, your struggle, your recovery. But what about me? What about what I've lost? I never asked you to give anything up, you didn't have to ask. She stood abruptly, pacing. You're my sister. Of course, I was going to help. Of course, I stayed. But every time someone asks about our family, it's how's your sister doing? Nobody asks how I'm doing. Nobody notices that I haven't slept through the night in 4 months because I'm terrified something will happen and I won't be there. Her voice cracked, and suddenly I saw at the weight she'd been carrying, invisible to everyone, including me. The resentment hadn't come from nowhere. It had been building, quietly, while she smiled and brought me tea and pretended everything was fine. Hannah. I reached out, but she pulled back. I'm not proud of what I said at Dad's party. I was wrong, but I can't keep doing this. I can't keep disappearing while everyone watches you. We sat in that small apartment for over an hour, words spilling out like water from a broken dam. Hannah told me about the job offer, how it wasn't just any job, but the position she'd been working toward for 3 years. A senior editor role at a publishing house in Seattle, with a salary that would have changed her life. She'd turned it down the same week I came home from the hospital, never mentioning it to anyone. I told myself it was temporary, she said, staring at her hands, that you'd get better fast, and I could reapply next year. But then months passed, and you were still using the crutch, still needing help. And I started wondering if this was just forever now. I felt my chest tighten. I didn't know. Why didn't you tell me? Because you were in pain. She looked up, eyes red-rimmed. How could I complain about my job when you could barely walk? It felt selfish. So I just swallowed it, day after day, until I couldn't anymore. The guilt settled over me like a heavy blanket. All this time, I'd been so focused on my own struggle, the physical therapy sessions that left me gasping, the nights when my hip throbbed so badly I couldn't sleep, the loss of independence that I hadn't noticed my sister losing herself in the process. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm so sorry, Hannah. She shook her head. You don't have to apologize for being sick. That's not. She paused, wiping her face roughly with her sleeve. I just wish someone had asked. Mom? Dad? Someone? I wish I hadn't had to explode like that to be seen. Before I left, we made a promise. We'd talk, really talk, every week. No more pretending. No more swallowing feelings until they turned toxic. It wasn't forgiveness yet, that would take time, but it was a start. A crack in the wall between us. When I got home, I found Mom in the kitchen, mechanically washing dishes that were already clean. She looked up when I entered, hope and fear mingling on her face. We talked, I said simply. Mom's shoulders sagged with relief. And we have a lot to work through. But she's not wrong, Mom. We've all been so focused on me that we forgot she needed support too. Mom set down the dish, suds dripping from her hands. I thought I was helping. I thought if I just kept everything running smoothly, if I took care of you both. You can't fix everything alone, I said gently. None of us can. That night, I called a family meeting. Dad sat in his usual chair. Mom perched on the sofa edge. And I actually stood, with my crutch for support, but standing nonetheless in the middle of the room. I need to say something, I began. My voice was steadier than I expected. Hannah was wrong about how she said it, but she wasn't wrong about everything. I've been letting all of you carry my burden without considering what it cost you, and that has to change. Dad started to protest, but I held up my hand. I'm not saying I'm going to push myself beyond what's safe, but I can do more. I can cook dinner twice a week. I can do my own laundry. I can handle my medical appointments without someone driving me every time. There's a bus route that stops 2 blocks from the clinic. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Sweetheart, we don't mind. I know, but I mind. I need to feel like myself again, not just someone everyone takes care of. And Hannah needs her life back. She needs to know that if an opportunity comes up, she can take it without guilt. The words hung in the air. Dad cleared his throat, and when he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. Your sister said some cruel things, but I've been thinking, maybe we all needed to hear them. Maybe we've been so afraid of losing you that we forgot you're still here, still capable, still strong. I don't feel very strong, I admitted. Strength isn't about doing everything alone, Mom said softly, but maybe it's also not about refusing to try. The following week, I started small. I made breakfast, just scrambled eggs and toast, but I did it standing at the stove, crutch propped nearby. My hip ached by the time I sat down to eat, but there was also pride. I'd forgotten what that felt like. I called Hannah and told her what I'd done. Her voice on the phone was cautious, but I heard the smile underneath. Scrambled eggs. Huh, don't burn the house down. No promises, I said, and we both laughed a real laugh. Not the forced kind we'd been manufacturing for months. I also scheduled a meeting with my physical therapist, Dr. Reyes. I told her everything about the party, about Hannah, about my own doubts. She listened without interrupting, then pulled up my chart. Your progress is actually ahead of schedule, she said, but I think we've been conservative because you mentioned being afraid of If you're ready, we can increase the intensity. You'll hurt more in the short term, but you'll also regain function faster. I'm ready, I said. The new exercises were brutal. Some days I left therapy with tears streaming down my face, muscles screaming. But I also started noticing changes, small ones at first. I could stand for 10 minutes instead of 5. I could walk to the mailbox without needing to rest halfway. The crutch became less of a crutch and more of a precaution. Hannah started coming home for Sunday dinners. The first time, the atmosphere was tense, everyone choosing words too carefully. But by the third week, Dad made a terrible joke about his coffee. Mom scolded him for his table manners, and Hannah stole a roll from my plate like she used to. Normal, imperfect, real. One evening, as we cleared dishes together, me drying, while Hannah washed, she said quietly, I reapplied to that publishing house. My heart jumped. And they want an interview next month. She paused, hands still in the soapy water. I'm going to take it. If they offer, I'm going to go. I set down the dish towel and hugged her, awkward and tight. Good. You should. We'll be okay. She hugged back, and I felt her shaking slightly. I'm still sorry for what I said. How I said it, I know. Me too. Hannah got the job. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon, and she burst through the front door with a smile so wide it looked like it might split her face in half. Mom cried happy tears this time, and Dad opened a bottle of wine he'd been saving for something special. I raised my glass, and when our eyes met across the table, there was understanding there. Forgiveness, slowly taking root. She had 6 weeks before the move. We spent them carefully, rebuilding what had cracked. Some days were easier than others. There were still moments when old tensions surfaced, when I saw her jaw tighten if I mentioned being tired, or when I caught myself resenting the lightness in her step as she packed boxes for her new life. But we'd learned to talk through it instead of burying it. One Saturday, she asked if I wanted to go through old photo albums with her. We sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, surrounded by pictures of us as kids, gap-toothed grins, matching Halloween costumes. That disastrous family trip to the beach where we both got sunburned. Remember this? Hannah held up a photo of us at my high school graduation. She had her arm around my shoulders, beaming with pride. I was so excited for you that day. I kept telling everyone, that's my sister. I took the photo, studying our younger faces. When did that change? When did I stop being your sister and start being your burden? She was quiet for a long moment. It didn't happen all at once. It was gradual. Like, every time someone asked how you were doing, and nobody asked about me, a little piece of resentment built up. Every time I canceled plans to stay home in case you needed something. Every time I walked past my old running shoes and remembered I used to have hobbies, a life outside these walls. She looked at me, eyes glistening. But you were never the burden. The situation was, I couldn't separate the two anymore. I get that now, I said. I think I was doing the same thing, letting the injury become my whole identity instead of just something I was dealing with. We spent the rest of the afternoon in comfortable silence, sorting photos into piles, ones she'd take with her, ones that would stay. It felt symbolic somehow, dividing up our shared history while making space for separate futures. The week before Hannah left, something unexpected happened. We were having coffee at the kitchen table when Dad came in holding an envelope, his expression unreadable. This came for you, he said, handing it to me. Inside was a letter from Aunt Carol, Dad's sister, who'd been at the birthday party. My stomach dropped. I hadn't spoken to her since that night, and wasn't sure what she thought of everything that had happened. I unfolded the letter with shaking hands and read, Dear one, I've been thinking about your father's birthday party, about what happened and what I saw. I want you to know something. I've watched you this past year, and what I've seen is courage. Not the loud kind that demands attention, but the quiet kind that shows up every day even when it hurts. I also want you to know that I've watched Hannah, and what I saw was someone drowning who didn't know how to ask for help. You both were suffering, just in different ways. What happened wasn't pretty, but maybe it needed to happen. Sometimes the only way to heal a wound is to cut it open first. Let all the poison out. I hope you two are finding your way back to each other. With love, Aunt Caroline passed the letter to Hannah, who read it with tears streaming down her face. She gets it, Hannah whispered. Someone actually gets it. Mom appeared in the doorway, drawn by the sound of Hannah's crying. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," I said, standing carefully and wrapping my arms around my sister. "Everything's finally right." Hannah's last night at home. We had a proper dinner, the kind we used to have before everything got complicated. Mom made pot roast, Dad told his terrible jokes, and for a few hours, it felt like old times. Better than old times, actually. Because now there was honesty underneath the laughter. After dessert, Hannah pulled out a small wrapped box and handed it to me. "I got you something. Don't make it weird." Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a tiny pair of wings. "It's cheesy, I know," she said, looking embarrassed. "But I saw it and thought of you. Because you're going to fly again. Maybe not the exact same way as before, but in your own way." I clasped it around my wrist, the metal cool against my skin. "Thank you. For this, for everything. To be honest, even when it hurts." She squeezed my hand. "Thank you for forgiving me. I didn't deserve it." "Yes, you did. We both deserved better than what we were doing to ourselves." The next morning, we all helped load Hannah's car. It was packed tight with boxes, suitcases, and the hopes of a new beginning. When it was time to say goodbye, Mom held her for a long time, whispering things I couldn't hear. Dad pressed money into her hand, despite her protests. "Just in case," he insisted. Then it was my turn. We stood facing each other on the driveway, morning sun warming our shoulders. "Call me when you get there," I said. "Every day for the first week, probably," Hannah replied, smiling through tears. "I'll be annoyed about it." "Good. Be annoying. Be happy. Be free." She hugged me carefully, mindful of my balance, but I held on tight. "I love you," she whispered. I never stopped, even when I was angry. "I need you to know that I know. I love you too. Now go build your life. I'll be here, building mine." We pulled apart, and she climbed into her car. As she backed down the driveway, she honked twice, our old signal from when she'd picked me up from school. I waved until her car disappeared around the corner. Then stood there a moment longer, breathing in the autumn air. The months after Hannah left were different, quieter, but not lonely. I fell into a rhythm: physical therapy 3 times a week, cooking dinner for Mom and Dad twice a week like I'd promised, and slowly, carefully, rebuilding my independence. Dr. Reyes pushed me harder, and I let her. Some sessions left me sweating and shaking, gripping the parallel bars with white knuckles. But I also started to see real progress. By October, I could walk the length of the clinic without my crutch. By November, I was using it only for long distances or when I was especially tired. Hannah called every Sunday, like clockwork. She'd tell me about her new apartment, tiny but bright, with a view of the city, and about her coworkers, her projects, the coffee shop on the corner that made the best lattes. I'd tell her about my therapy milestones, about the new recipes I was trying, about Dad's latest attempts at home improvement that always required Mom's intervention. "You sound happy," she said one Sunday, and there was wonder in her voice. "I am," I realized. "Are you?" "Yeah, I really am." One afternoon in early December, almost 6 months after Dad's birthday party, I walked to the corner store by myself. No crutch, no assistance, just me and my own 2 feet. It was only 3 blocks, but it felt like miles. The December air was crisp, stinging my cheeks, and my hip ached by the time I pushed through the store's door. But I'd done it. Mrs. Chen, who owned the store, looked up from the register. "Well, look at you, walking on your own." I grinned, feeling like a kid who'd just learned to ride a bike. "I know. I can't quite believe it myself." "You always were strong," she said, bagging my groceries. "Even when you didn't believe it." Those words stayed with me as I walked home, each step deliberate and proud. When I got to the house, Mom was on the porch, having watched my whole journey. She didn't say anything, just pulled me into a hug that smelled like her lavender hand cream and the pie she'd been baking. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "Me too," I said. "Me too." For Christmas, Hannah came home. We'd talked about it for weeks. Both nervous about how it would feel to be together again in the house, where everything had fallen apart. But when she pulled into the driveway and climbed out of her car, all the worry melted away. She looked different, lighter somehow, like she'd been carrying a heavy coat and finally took it off. Her hair was shorter, she wore new glasses, and when she smiled, it reached all the way to her eyes. "Hi, stranger," I said from the porch, and this time I was the one who walked down the steps to meet her. No crutch in sight. Her eyes widened. "Look at you. You're walking pretty amazing, right?" I did a little spin, showing off. My hip twinged, but I didn't care. She dropped her bags and hugged me, tight and long. "I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud." That night, we decorated the tree together, All four of us, like we used to. Dad told his terrible jokes. Mom fussed over ornament placement. And Hannah and I argued about whether the star or the angel should go on top. It was beautifully, perfectly normal. Later, after Mom and Dad had gone to bed, Hannah and I sat in the living room with mugs of hot chocolate, watching the tree lights blink in the darkness. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For letting me go. For not making me feel guilty. For ... For giving me when I didn't deserve it." I took her hand, the silver bracelet she'd given me catching the light. "You always deserved it." We were both drowning, Hannah. We just couldn't see each other clearly enough to realize it. She wiped her eyes. "I saw Aunt Carol at Thanksgiving. She asked about you. Told me she was glad we worked things out. She wrote me a letter, you know, after the party." "She did." "Yeah. She said sometimes the only way to heal a wound is to cut it open first. Let all the poison out." I looked at my sister, really looked at her. She was right. What happened at Dad's party, it hurt like hell, but it was also what we needed. Both of us. Hannah nodded slowly. "I think you're right. I just wish I'd found a better way to say it." Maybe there wasn't a better way. Maybe some truths are so big and sharp they can only come out with edges. We sat in comfortable silence, sipping our chocolate, watching the lights blur and focus. Finally, Hannah said, "You know what the hardest part of moving away was?" "What?" "Realizing I'd spent so long being angry that I'd forgotten who you really were. Who we really were." She turned to face me. "I'm not going to forget again, even from Seattle. Especially from Seattle." "Good," I said, "because I'm not going to let you." I still think about that night at Dad's birthday party sometimes. About my crutch landing in the cake. About the silence that followed. About the way Hannah's voice cut through the air like glass. It was the worst moment of my life and, also, in a strange way, one of the most important. Because that night broke something that needed to be broken. It shattered the illusion we'd all been living in, where we pretended everything was fine while we quietly fell apart. And in breaking, it gave us permission to be honest, to be hurt, to be angry, to be human. Recovery isn't just about healing bodies, it's about healing relationships too, about learning that sometimes love means letting go, and sometimes it means holding on tighter, understanding that strength isn't about suffering in silence, it's about having the courage to say, "I'm drowning," before you go under. Hannah and I are closer now than we've ever been. And the distance between us has nothing to do with miles. We learned how to see each other, really see each other, past our own pain. And that's a gift I wouldn't trade, even if it came wrapped in the worst night of my life. So if you're struggling with someone you love, if you're carrying resentment or guilt or anger that's eating you alive, I want to tell you this: say something, before it becomes a crutch thrown at a birthday party, before words turn cruel, before love gets buried under everything you're too afraid to admit. It won't be easy. It might get messy, but on the other side of that honesty, there's healing, there's forgiveness, there's a chance to start again, together. Would you do what I did? Would you have found it in your heart to forgive? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below.